What's up, folks? What's going on? Welcome to episode 111 of the Spun Today Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Shout out to 111th Street, the street that I grew up on in Richmond Hill, Queens, New York. And once again, I'm your host, Tony Ortiz. Thank you very much for listening. In this episode, I speak about UFC 229 and the recent historical trade between the UFC and One Championship. I speak about a bunch of recent comedy specials, including Bert Kreischer's, Joe Rogan's, Adam Sandler's, and an upcoming montage special of a fleet of savage comics. I also speak about watching Avengers Infinity War and the Venom movie. I speak about Season 6 of Orange is the New Black and Ozark Season 2. Lastly, I circle back on the Pusha-T and Drake Rap beef in light of some new information from each side. So stick around if you're into any of that good stuff. If you're new to the podcast and would like to help support, check out my book, Make Way for You, Tips for Getting Out of Your Own Way. It's available in any and every ebook platform of your choosing, as well as in paperback via Amazon.com. For more information about the book, check out spuntoday.com/books. There, you also have the opportunity to drop in your email address and get a free copy delivered to you in a digital format of your choosing. Again, go to spuntoday.com/books. Another way to help support the podcast is by becoming a Patreon. For more on that, go to patreon.com/Spun Today. That's Patreon, spelled patreon.com/Spun Today. There, you're able to make a financial contribution to the podcast on a recurring basis in an amount of your choosing, whether it be $1, $2, a couple G's, or whatever your heart desires. Again, for that option, go to patreon.com/Spun Today. Alright, let's get into some UFC talk. Or MMA talk, rather. Did you guys see UFC 229? Shout out and kudos to Khabib Nurmagomedov, who remains undefeated and beat Conor as many people thought that he would. I felt that in the fight, Conor, like I went over prior to the event, Conor's chance of winning would be, and this wasn't, like a unique opinion or anything like that, but his chances of winning would be within the first 2 rounds, and I thought he would be able to pull it off, but that was not the case. He showed some good defense in the very first round to Khabib's takedowns, but then, soon enough, as expected by most Khabib supporters and most pundits, Khabib's just onslaught of wrestling just outclassed Conor like it outclasses anybody else in the UFC, and he was able to keep and press Conor down. Conor, in my opinion, did not look himself. He definitely had ring rust. I know, like Dominic Cruz, for example, doesn't believe in ring rust. He thinks that, when you're at a certain elite level, you can take off for 5 years and come back, and it'll be like you haven't taken off a day because you stay in that mode, stay in that conditioning cycle. But Conor has $100 million. Conor, or had, I'm sure he's blown a lot of it, the way he spends. Hopefully he's invested wisely, as he says he has, but it's also his first MMA fight in 2 years. And in that 2-year span, he had 1 boxing fight with Floyd Mayweather. So he definitely had some ring rust going on. He didn't look himself. He didn't seem to be able to catch, have control of the range that he normally has control over, and the weird angles that he hits fighters with. He didn't seem to be able to hit Khabib cleanly, and the handful of times that he did, it didn't seem to have the same, impact behind his punches like he normally does. It didn't look like something was off with Conor. It didn't look like that Mystic Mac fucking, he calls it happens time and time again. fighter. Then after Khabib pretty much smashed him, and Conor didn't look good towards like the second half of the first round, the entire second round. Then the third round, he started looking a little better, and then he got caught in the neck crank. That submitted him. He submitted again, which sucks. Tapped out, rather, again. But it is what it is. Khabib was definitely the better fighter that evening. And unfortunately, the whole thing got the aftermath of the fight outshone the incredible performance by Khabib in just completely dominating Conor. And what a like, not just moral victory, but just like such a satisfactory victory that must have been, after going through all the shit that he went through with Conor and his shit talking and his style of promoting a fight, with his disrespectful antics. And Khabib is like the polar opposite of that. He's a devout Muslim, and he's all about respect, and he's like the martial artist kind of Zen, be respectful of the art type of fighter. And Conor is, by all means, obviously a martial artist, but he's also a showman. He's also a prize fighter, and he knows that his goal is to get as much money as he possibly can. That should have been how it ended, on a high note, and then Khabib jumped over the fence and went after one of the guys from Conor's camp, which was talking shit the whole time as well, and was being disrespectful supposedly, and he hit him, and there was like a little brawl outside of the cage, but then two guys from Khabib's camp jumped into the cage, and one of them sucker punched Conor. Conor swung at one of them, I believe first, that was coming at him, and then another one like sucker punched him, and it was just like a big melee that happened at the end, and that's like everything that was being spoken about, after the fight, and it sucked that it ended that way. However, from just like a hype and attention standpoint, it was what everybody was speaking about the day after, and the day after that, and the day after that. It's kind of like a bad look for the sport. And, in terms of, the UFC just signed a contract with ESPN and going, uber mainstream from, taking a step up from the stigma that the UFC has always had in, quote unquote, being human cockfighting. And then they got to deal with Fox. They took that step up, and now they took the step of going from Fox to ESPN, which is that much more mainstream, and ESPN is owned by Disney, which is obviously like a family type of company. And this was probably not a good look in that respect. However, in terms of hype, since it's nobody can stop speaking about it, what happened, it's very exciting and very good when looked at through that lens. When looked at through the lens of, we can hype the shit out of a rematch now, the same way that the UFC promoted and used like the footage of Conor throwing the dolly at the bus, which shattered the window, and he had to go to court for here in New York. And they used that time and time again to egg on this fight, like the hype behind this fight, especially since Conor came out and said, the reason why there wasn't so much like press is because he had that written into his contract, saying that he just wanted to focus on the fight and he'll do like 1 or 2 media obligations and that's it. And so they used like that whole dolly thing to hype up this fight. Hyping up a rematch will be just as easy by, using this clear animosity that continued to bubble over even after the fight in the with each camp. And like in the fight too, I didn't see this, but I didn't bother looking it up. I heard it from very reliable sources that I listened to, like Brendan Schaub and I think Ariel Helwani as well. During the fight, like either in between rounds, Conor said something to the effect to Khabib, saying that it was only business. Everything was only business. And so obviously, Khabib didn't take it as only business. He took it as very disrespectful, to speak about his family, to speak about his religion, etc., etc. and what happened. The Nevada State Athletic Commission was holding each fighter's purse for some time afterwards. Conor got his soon after, meaning by his purse, meaning his money, and I believe Khabib's has been released to him now as well. And Conor is obviously itching for a rematch to get that loss back, the same way he did with Nate Diaz. When he lost the first match, he fought him again and won the second. But this was very one-sided, the fight. It was very Khabib dominated Conor, so it's hard to sell. If it was any other fighter besides Conor, it's hard to sell a rematch. However, since it's Conor, and Conor could hype up himself like shadow boxing and actually sell it, plus the melee that happened after the match, there's a good chance that it would happen, in my opinion, or that it should. I know, like, for example, like a Tony Ferguson, I'm sure doesn't see it that way, and he had a spectacular fight against Anthony Pettis. It was, I believe, fight of the night, and that was dope. And he's definitely, he was the champion pre-Con. Conor got stripped for, taking off for 2 years and fighting Mayweather, and Tony Ferguson was the champion. He fought for the vacated belt and won. And then Tony Ferguson had an unfortunate accident where he was on stage doing a UFC like press conference responsibility thing, and he tripped on some like camera wire or lighting wire or something like that, and the ligament from his knee, like one of the ligaments, completely ripped off the bone, like cleanly. Like if you guys Google and like see his scar, it's like one of the worst scars I've ever seen for like some sort of, like operation. He had to get like staples and like his whole shit. Like the scar looks like the size of his shin, for example. It's crazy shit. So then that happened. So then they stripped him because he couldn't fight for a very long time. And some thought that he would never fight again. And he actually came back in record time and fought Anthony Pettis in a spectacular fight of the night performance. So I'm sure he's going to want to get in there to get what's in from his vantage point, and I can't say I disagree with him, the title that's rightfully his, and I wouldn't be mad at that. But it's October now. They could be able to do both fights. I would say if the UFC can do Tony Ferguson versus Khabib somewhere in like February, around there, February, maybe even March, and then do Conor Khabib 2 for the July 4th card, that would be pretty dope. I think that would be dope. And that's of course assuming that Khabib beats Tony, which is no walk in the park. And honestly, even if he didn't, it kind of would be dope to see Conor, not just give Conor a title fight right after he lost the title fight, just because he's Conor, and make it, let's say Tony beats Khabib, have Conor fight Khabib again for the July card, have that rematch, and have Tony like headline that card with who else will be up there? I don't know, whoever's like the number one contender after that. And then have the winner of Conor Khabib fight Tony Ferguson for the belt, if Tony beats Khabib. Anyway, it was a dope card. The second thing that stole the show, which I'll put in the episode notes, is the post-fight interview of Derek Lewis with Joe Rogan. He was losing his fight to was it Ozdemir? Or Ozdemir fought this weekend? Volkov. He was losing the fight to Volkov, and at the end pulls out like a bomb fucking knockout, like in the last like 30 seconds or some crazy shit like that of the last round. And he's completely out of breath. He was getting beat the whole fight, and pulls up this victory. And then he, in the post-fight interview, he takes off his shorts. He has like 2 layers of shorts on. He takes off one of them, and everybody's like, "The fuck is this dude doing?" And then Rogan asks him right away, in true Rogan form, he's like, "Why'd you take off your pants?" And without skipping a beat, Derek Lewis just says, "My balls was hot." That shit was hilarious. He has like t-shirts printed out now with his face on it saying my balls was hot. Like it's like a whole thing. It's pretty cool. And then he goes on to say shit like Donald Trump called me and told me that him and Putin are making him look bad, and I gotta knock this Russian motherfucker out for him or some shit like that, which is funny. Then he tells Rogan that he wants to go on Rogan's podcast to smoke weed with him, and it was dope. It was a dope post-fight interview. I'll link that in the episode notes for you guys to check it out. The next point of UFC talk, MMA talk that I want to reference is a historic trade. It's never been done before. This is the first time ever. A trade between two different organizations, MMA organizations. One is the UFC, obviously, and the other one is One Championship, which I had never heard of before this trade happened. And I should have heard of it because the person that they traded for was Ben Askren. And Ben Askren has been on Rogan's podcast, and Ben Askren is thought of by most the best welterweight on the planet. He's undefeated, but he doesn't fight in the UFC. And the reason he doesn't fight in the UFC is because he has this like long-term beef with UFC president Dana White. And they never, he was in the UFC and they released him because of this like personal issue that they had, or he was just like never signed. One of the two. I don't remember what it is. But now, lo and behold, they make this historic trade, first time ever, for Ben Askren, and they traded away Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse. Which sucks to see him go, especially after a loss. It's kind of like, fuck. You know, he just lost, and for the first time ever, not the first time ever, sorry. He lost, it's probably like his third loss, I want to say, maybe second. But it's the first time he lost after defending the 125-pound championship more times than any other championship has ever been defended. I think it was 12 times. So he was the most reigningest champion in the UFC. And then he lost his last fight, which I was really anticipating him winning so that he can fight TJ Dillashaw, which is a 135-pounder. And that would have been dope to see. But alas, we're not going to see that, like I spoke about in a previous episode. And now we're not going to see it at all because DJ is going to One Championship. He's no longer going to be fighting for the UFC. They bought out each other's contracts, and Ben Askren is coming to the UFC. Now, it's pretty dope that Ben Askren is coming, though, because he's, like I said, regarded as one of the best welterweights ever. He's undefeated. It's like some crazy stat, like in his last 10 fights, like never even got punched or something like that. He's like a sick wrestler, like Khabib. He talks a lot of shit. Like he talks shit like Conor talks shit, supposedly. He's been, calling out mad people in the UFC already. And, he's been itching to fight the UFC because he, in his opinion, is obviously the best. And he just, couldn't get into the organization because of like politics and shit. And so it'll be dope to see. I'm excited to see him fight, to see his first fight in the UFC. Now DJ going to One Championship, like I kind of feel like it's, I don't know, like Bellator is the only other league that gives the UFC competition in terms of like name recognition and the class of fighters that it has, and that's largely because a lot of fighters that were in the UFC and had like contract disputes and stuff like that, some of them went to Bellator. But Bellator is still a very distant second to the UFC in terms of like size and revenue and, being like the game in town. And ONE FC, I was just like, why ONE FC? Like, why not? Obviously Ben Askren was there and that's who the UFC wanted, I guess. But why not? My first thought was, why not like Bellator or something like that? But it makes sense now, which I didn't know, because Matt Hume, which is Demetrius Johnson's trainer, is a VP at One Championship. So that was interesting. I didn't know that at all. So it kind of makes sense why he wound up there. And what I'm excited for is that this, I think, starts to set like a precedent for down the line. Being able to see how we saw, for example, Conor versus Mayweather. It's like a cross promotion type of thing, but we can probably see it even more frequently so, since it's all MMA, seeing fights between different organizations, like the heavyweight championship, heavyweight champion of Bellator versus the heavyweight champion of the UFC, for example, and see stuff like that, like some cross promotion stuff down the line. Now it seems like it would make more sense because something like this, like a trade, was even crazier than that, like a crazier thought than that, and it happened. So it's pretty interesting shit. Next up, we got some comedy talk. So I'm into stand-up comedy. Like I've told you guys in the past, I tell you guys about different specials that I see that I feel are worth speaking about. I don't speak about all of them, but I saw recently, probably a few weeks ago already, Bert Kreischer's Secret Time, which is now streaming on Netflix, and it was super funny. Kreischer's a Comedy Store comic. He's from like Rogan's camp, like a group of comics that gained, they were popular within their own rights, but gained a lot of popularity from being part of like that group of funny stand-up comics. And he really blew up after telling the machine story, which I'm sure I've like referenced in the past and have linked to in other episode notes or something like that, or definitely I've tweeted it. Follow me on Twitter at Spun Today, by the way. And he has a new special called Secret Time, and it's streaming on Netflix. He has this really funny bit with, like, parts of it were a little not cringeworthy, but he was like talking shit about his kids, like, yo, my daughter's dumb, this and that, blah 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 blah, which is funny in a satirical way, but then at the same time I'm kind of like, damn, imagine his kid like seeing it. It's probably like, damn, dad, you think I'm dumb? But I know they're comics, this is like the way they think. And I'm probably just getting like softer after like having a kid or getting like more sensitive to that type of thing. But don't get me wrong, it was still like funny as shit. And he has this really, really funny bit, spoiler alert, that, and I'm not going to say the bit, so I'm not going to completely spoil it, but like he ties in one of his daughters like doing dumb shit, like putting deodorant in the fridge because it says it's to keep it fresh or something like that. And he goes into this whole like long thing about that, and then he ties that in with time travel, and it like tied it in like so perfectly, like so well, that it made like the whole shitting on his daughter thing on one of his daughters, or both of his daughters actually did, but this specific bit was about one of his daughters. It like made the whole bit worth it, so it was pretty funny. Check it out. It's called Bert Kreischer's Secret Time. Next up is Joe Rogan's latest comedy special, also streaming on Netflix, called Strange Times. I liked better Rogan's previous special to this, which was called Triggered. That's my favorite Rogan special of all, and this one was really good. It was funny. I did like Triggered more than this one. It's probably because I listen to so much Rogan, like from his podcast and stuff like that. I know like a bunch of his premises or his point of view on a lot of things that comes out in his comedy. So it kind of sort of takes it down for me a notch. But it's still enjoyable. Still worth watching, in my opinion. I still watch them all. He did have this really funny bit about Thomas Jefferson and like bringing him, like if we built a time machine and brought Thomas Jefferson back to now, one of the first things he would say is, wait a second, you guys didn't write any new shit? Like in terms of the Constitution and stuff like that. So it was pretty funny. Anyway, check it out. It's called Strange Times by Joe Rogan, and it is now streaming on Netflix. Next up is Adam Sandler's latest comedy special, which is called 100% Fresh, also streaming on Netflix. Netflix is like the go-to spot, if you haven't noticed, for like comedy specials. They have, some argue too many, some say, actually I haven't heard anybody say like the right amount, but some people think that now it's like everybody and anybody gets a special on Netflix, and it's like, people like comedy specials. I don't mind it, to be honest. I don't think it like dilutes it. Like, so the argument is that so many people have a comedy special now that they're not all good, like they're not all like special, quote unquote, anymore. But it's like something for everybody, kind of. It's not like every TV show on the air is not good. Every movie that comes out is not good. Doesn't mean every single comedy special has to be fucking amazing. And different comics, appeal to different people, different tastes. And I digress. Anyway, Adam Sandler is not necessarily my favorite style of funny, although I enjoy his type of funny, like that silly comedy type of thing. You know, whether it be in his movies or like most of his stand-up was. But I do enjoy enough of it to watch it. You know what I mean? Like enough parts of it to watch it. You know, he does. It's not like a traditional comedy special. First off, he like cuts together a bunch of different shows, similar to how Chris Rock did with Bigger and Blacker. I think it was Bigger and Blacker, like that special, where he did, you know, the same show in different locations and just like cut together like the best parts of each and put them together for the recording. He did that, which is cool. But he does a lot of like singing songs and, you know, playing the guitar and stuff like that within, you know, riddled throughout. And one of the most hilarious songs are "My Uber Driver Smells Bad," which I'm probably going to drop in the episode notes. In the outro of this episode, I'll probably drop the song. It's only like a minute long, a minute and a half long or something like that. But it's hilarious. It's like a rap song about an Uber driver that smells bad. Anyway, the most memorable and part of it for me was a dedication that he did at the end for Chris Farley, which was really funny and really touching. And he shows a lot of like iconic SNL clips and Tommy Boy clips of Chris Farley, like on a big screen, like behind him while he's playing the guitar. And he fucking plays the guitar really well, by the way. I mean, coming from somebody that doesn't know shit about playing guitar, except for taking, I think, like 4 guitar lessons ever and never being able to retain anything of it. I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between something that Adam Sandler played on the guitar and something that Tom Morello played on the guitar. I'm joking. Slightly joking. I'm exaggerating for the effect, exaggerating to make the point, but it's not far from the truth. Like, I don't have like that musical ear where I can tell like what's good or what's not. I'm just saying, to me, it sounded good. Check it out. It's called 100% Fresh, and it's Adam Sandler's latest special, and it's now streaming on Netflix. And last point on comedy stuff, there is a string of 30-second comedy specials coming out on the 30th, which is in 2 days from now. I'm recording this episode on October 28th, 2018. This string of comedy specials comes out on October 30th, 2018, and this podcast drops on November 1st, 2018. So at the time that you guys are listening to this, if you listen to it when it drops, the comedy specials will be live and streaming now on Netflix as of last night. Anyways, it's a bunch of comics that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different comics, 4 of which I know from podcasts and either seeing live or listening to their podcasts or listening to them on Rogan or listening to them on their own podcasts. And I'm really excited for a lot of them. It's half-hour specials. It's not full-hour specials, but still dope and still going to be on Netflix. One of them is Joey motherfucking Coco Diaz, which I've seen live, and I listened to his podcast, The Church of What's Happening Now, and he's one of my favorite guests when he's on JRE. Big J Okerson, which is one of Ari's boys. He has his own podcast, if I'm not mistaken, or he's on a couple. I think he's part of like Punch Drunk Sports and Skankfest, or Skankfest podcast, or is that like, I don't know. Anyway, I think he has another podcast also, but I don't listen to that. I've heard him on Rogan. I've heard him on Ari's podcast, The Skeptic Tank, a bunch of times, and stuff like that. And I mean, I've seen his stand-up before. He's funny, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. Christina Pajitsky. I've seen her stand-up before. She is the co-host with her husband, Tom Segura, which is a hilarious comic and also one of my favorite Rogan podcast guests. They have a podcast called Your Mom's House, and I've seen her stand up before. She's hilarious. Really cool to see her have a half hour. Even though her last special was an hour, so it's kind of like some people are like a half hour is kind of like less, time wise. Obviously, it's less than an hour, but they see it as like a step down from doing an hour special. But I don't know. Is it? Is it not? It's kind of like a new, different thing that Netflix is coming out with. They did like 15-minute ones also, which I don't think did that good. But half hour, it's a dope amount of time, I think. Brad Williams, which I listened to in the About Last Night podcast, and I've seen clips of his comedy before. I haven't seen like a full special or anything like that. He's a funny dude. I'm looking forward to that as well. And the other two I have not heard of. I think one of them, Lisa Traeger. I've heard the name before, but I don't know anything about her. And also, same goes for Yamanika Saunders. But if they're part of this ensemble, quote-unquote, cast of the Degenerates special, which is what it's going to be called, and they are in good company. They must be worth their salt if they're being lumped together with those other hilarious folks. And I'm looking forward to these Degenerate comics and watching that special. Check it out. It's going to be called The Degenerates, and will be streaming live now on Netflix. Next up is some movie talk. All right, 2 movies that I've seen, 2 Marvel movies, one of which has been out for a minute that I haven't spoken about, which is Avengers Infinity War. I believe it's the 3rd Avengers movie, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it the 4th? I'm not sure. But it's the Infinity War, the one with Thanos. And it was super good. It did not disappoint. I know I had a ton of hype behind it. I didn't hear anything bad about it after the fact. And I just heard that the ending is like, what the fuck? And the ending was, what the fuck? Especially if you do not follow like the comics or anything like that, which I didn't. So I didn't know what to expect. And I would imagine that this type of thing happened in the comics. Or what happened in the movie. Spoiler alert. I'm going to spoil the whole shit for you. If you continue to listen, I'll give you a second to fast forward about a minute or two. But, yeah. And if it wasn't part of the comics, it's even that much more ballsy on the part of Marvel to like include something like this in the movie. But I'm pretty sure it had to be in it. My money is on this happened in the comic books, and Marvel is just doing what they do and implementing the comic books. But anything written to screen goes through a different process called screenwriting, and they can, it's still Marvel content. They can take the liberties that they want to take. They didn't have to theoretically include this, but it is the Infinity War, and I'm sure they're building up to something even bigger. But I could also see an alternate reality where they didn't end it the way that they did, and they just continue making movies and movies and movies and movies and movies with all the people that they killed at the end. Yes, that's right. A shitload of motherfuckers died in Infinity War. Spoiler alert. It's like Thanos gets what he wanted, which is all the Infinity Stones, right? And when he got all of them, all he had to do was snap his fingers, and it would kill half of everything in the universe. Half of all humans, half of all aliens, half of all people from Asgard, half of all people from everywhere. Half of everything dies from him snapping his fingers. And the Avengers were unsuccessful in stopping him from getting all these stones. And that's exactly what happened. He wound up snapping his fingers, and everybody died. And there was this like long montage style set of scenes at the end of the movie where people were dying. People were literally disintegrating into dust right before everybody else's eyes. Spider-Man fucking died. Spider-Man, the amazing Spider-Man, dies. Doctor Strange dies. So many people. Black Panther, I think, died, right? Or am I wrong? I think Black Panther died too. It was like a whole bunch of people like, what? That person died? I felt like I was watching Game of Thrones, even though I don't watch Game of Thrones, but I know that a big thing in Game of Thrones is that people that you don't expect to dying every week or whatever. It's like everybody and the mother died. Nick Fury, the head of the whole fucking Avengers organization force thing, dies. And at the end he like beeps with a two-way pager Captain Marvel, which is obviously going to be at the center of the next movie, which is the final Avengers movie, if I'm not mistaken. And she's going to come, like, save the day. And she's, like, the most powerful superhero ever, or something like that. She's, like, Superman, but a woman, and in the Marvel universe. I don't even know, like, what her powers are and stuff like that, but we're going to find out. She's going to come wreck shit. And, yeah, like, the after the credits scene at the end, Thanos is still alive. He lives, and he looks like all like hurt and shit, or like beat down. Because the whole thing like wore on him, but I don't know. He's still alive, so I'm pretty sure she's gonna come and wreck that ass. Next up is Venom, the movie. I went to the movie theater to watch this with my wife. It's probably like our favorite thing to do, like date wise, is go to the movies. We like that shit. And we went to go see Venom. And I like Tom Hardy. I like Tom Hardy movies. He's an amazing actor. I was excited to see a Venom movie, because Venom is like one of the cool like villains. Has always been like kind of one of the cool villains to me. I don't know if it's like the whole black thing, being like an all black or whatever, but I don't know. The little that I did follow of like comics or like cartoons and stuff like that, Venom was always like he's like the Joker for Batman. You know what I mean? He was like that for Spider-Man. It was interesting to see him in his own little like spin-off movie, and then having Tom Hardy play him, bigs it up that much more. I thought it was a good movie, but I didn't love it. Like I didn't come out of it like, holy shit, this is so dope. I really liked that the bad guy in it was, I forget his real name, but the actor that played Nas in The Night Of, which if you guys haven't seen, go back to listen to like my ranting and raving about that miniseries on HBO. But it was an amazing miniseries, a great show called The Night Of, and the main character's name is Nas, and he plays the bad guy in Venom. So it was entertaining. It was worth watching. I thought it was good. I just didn't love it. I didn't like want to immediately watch it again or anything like that. It was a good movie though. A good takeaway from watching it, not just the movie, but from the previews of upcoming movies, were Creed 2, which I'm looking forward to watching. I enjoyed Creed 1. I like Michael B. Jordan. I think he has a touch too much hype behind him in terms of like acting wise, his acting chops or whatever. But I see the appeal of him, and he's a good actor, and I like him as well. Not to like the nth degree type of thing, but looking forward to Creed 2. It's a Rocky movie. Rocky movies always like feel good. Rocky movies check off all the boxes that they're supposed to check off in perfect like story structure form. Every convention for its genre is checked off. It's like what you're getting going in. You are entertained, and it's a satisfying experience. The other movie that looks really good based on the previews is a movie for Aquaman, which is he's a DC character. It looks like a really good DC movie. Another one, like as good as DC did a really good job with like Wonder Woman, for example. This looks like it could be like a really good. Not franchise might not be the right word, but kind of like how Avengers like revamped like all the Marvel movies type of thing. I think Aquaman, if done right, can do the same thing for DC. Like, it looked really, really good. And Aquaman is like pretty much Superman, but like in the water type of thing. And they get into like his backstory and like stuff like that, and it looks like it could be really good. So I'm looking forward to that. Alrighty, let's get into some shows. There's a couple shows that I'm going to speak about. First up is Orange is the New Black, Season 6, now streaming on Netflix, as well as, I'm sure you can see Seasons 1 through 5 as well, but Season 6 is the latest. Now, for those of you that don't know, Orange is the New Black is a series about a female prison and a bunch of female prisoners. Think Oz, but the female version and a little more watered down. Until this season. This season got a little more realer, quote unquote, in terms of the whole prison experience, because the women from Orange is the New Black, you know, in season 5, it ended with them in a riot and a guard dying, and one of the inmates died in Pusey, which, you know, pretty much triggered the riot. And there was like a lot of uncertainty after that season and what's going to happen. Who's going to get more time? Who's going to be in jail for life? Or, you know, just what's going to happen. And the outcome was that pretty much the women got shipped out, and, you know, a bunch of them got separated and a bunch of them got shipped out to different prisons. But the prisons that they went to were like hardcore, more Oz-like prisons. And Oz, for those of the uninitiated, was a male prison show on HBO many years ago, which was really good. Really, really good. So in this one, season 6, there's a bunch of new characters obviously introduced, because the women from the Orange is the New Black, from the prison that they were in Litchfield, they got shipped out to all these other different prisons, most of them, and separated, or, you know, they went to different areas of the prison and stuff like that. So there's a lot of new storylines that I thought they would, you know, keep the show going for a couple more seasons. But I guess not, because Orange is the New Black announced that the next season, season 7, is going to be its last. And the show is going to end after 7 seasons, which is a great run. Great run. Especially for, I think, like one of the first, or at least one of the first popular original programming from Netflix. So kudos to them on that. And this season was interesting in that it showed, you know, a lot of, like, the backstory is really good of, like, some of the new characters. Like, there was this one girl, Spanish looking girl, that was pretty much like a female pimp on the outside, and she would like pimp out her like girlfriends and stuff. There was these two sisters which pretty much ran shit in the prison, but they hated each other. They were like in 2 different blocks, and it was like beef between like both blocks. It was like C block and D block. D block. Sorry, I had to do that. And they pretty much like ran the prison. Like, both were like the shot callers in each block, and they went to jail because back when they were like in high school, both of them, like they were like a year or 2 apart from each other, and both in high school, their parents decided to move away because their little sister, that was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old or something like that, she was like into figure skating, and she was going to like I don't know, the high school championships or something like that. They had to move away to a new town, so the girls were like pissed off that they were gonna leave their school and leave other friends and shit like that, and because of the little girl, and they resented her, and they pretty much, the little girl wanted to, I don't know, release her turtles into the lake or some shit like that, and the parents said no because the lake is frozen over already. And she said that supposedly they can cut a little hole and put them in and they'll be fine. And that she wanted to do it before they left, but the parents denied it and said no. The 2 sisters said that they would take her without the parents knowing, and they did. But what they did was, they took her there, then they locked her inside the car, and then pushed the car into the fucking river and killed the little girl and let her drown. And that's why they were in prison. And then they like resented and hated each other over some like dumb shit, and there's a bunch of like interesting characters like that, interesting back characters. There was another character that did, so as you see, the show got like a little more real. This is what I mean by a little more real, like a little darker. And, a bunch of crazy bitches in prison. Basically, not just people that like got caught shoplifting or doing something with drugs or whatever, like it seemed to be in when they were at Litchfield. There was this one lady that was there because she like drowned her kid or her kids, like crazy shit like that. So there was a lot. It was a lot more dynamic, I thought, this season. Then it pretty much ended with a bunch of them getting early release, because of all the bad publicity that the private prison got from the riot and stuff like that. They changed their name and they wanted to, implement this system where they let, 50 inmates out for early for good behavior or something like that. So they just picked the top 50 good ones, quote unquote. And it was like this whole PR campaign type of thing that it wound up boiling down and working like that for the prisoners. But the reason behind it was just, like PR shit, basically, from the private corporation which runs the prison, and this is what they wanted to do to clean up their image and blah, 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 and help rehabilitate the inmates and show that a bunch of them have already been rehabilitated and so forth, on and on and on and on. And long story short, like Piper gets out, which is like the main one that the show was like written around, and one of the other characters that gets out also is under the impression that she's getting out, and then she's also one of the main characters from the original season, and she is actually like a bunch of them start getting separated, and some of them walk out, and their families are waiting for them outside, and some of them get separated as she did, and it was because she was getting deported back to DR. So that was crazy. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with that. Maybe she's, just done with the show, which will suck. Or maybe, they'll show her storyline and trying to get back into the States or something like that. It'll be interesting to see. She's actually a friend of mine from high school. She's her cousin, which is pretty cool. I don't know her personally. I met her once, like back in the day, back when I was like in high school, I think. Or like fresh out. But it was many years ago. Who else? Dahlia. It was interesting. Her storyline, it shows her pretty much getting deeper into the whole prison thing. Like she gets into drugs, she gets into smuggling drugs, she gets into doing drugs, and she's like, she got more time. I think she got life. And she's like, fuck it, this is what my life is gonna be now. So she just se entregó that life. Who else? Her mother also, which was out, started like to help the daughter kind of, and to make ends meet and make more money. Well, actually not to help the daughter, because it was Dahlia's idea, but she was doing it to try to get more money, try to get enough money to get a place that had like 3 or 4 rooms, so she can get her other children out of foster care, but she needed like a bedroom for each one. So she needs an apartment with like 3 or 4 rooms, and she doesn't have the money to do so. So she has this like whole scheme of, together with her daughter Dahlia, which is in jail, of smuggling the drugs. And she gets this guard involved, which is not her like boyfriend or whatever, who's having like this whole like thrill ride fucking thing of banging an ex-inmate and smuggling drugs and shit like that. It's like a rush for him. So it's interesting to see like those like character like paradigm shifts. And that was a good season. Check it out, folks. It's Orange is the New Black, season 6, now streaming on Netflix. Next up is season 2 of Ozark, also available on Netflix. You can stream both season 1 and season 2. Binge watch both of them bitches if you need to. But definitely, absolutely, hands down, number 1 recommendation, watch this show. I love this fucking show. It's so dope. It's so interesting and takes so many sharp, unexpected turns. And the premise of it, let me just give you guys the premise of it, so you can sort of kind of get an idea of what it is Jason Bateman, which is the main character, and I recently found out directed 6 of the episodes, and that's how he agreed to sign on to it, because he said he felt, and I'll link to the interview where he says this with the Hollywood Reporter. He said that he read the 2 scripts that were written at the time when he chose to sign up for the show. He said that he would sign up for it if he was able to direct as well. And since he has directed 6 of the episodes, and the reason why is because he saw something in the character where he felt he needed to have, it might be, I guess you could look at it as like a control type of thing, but he said, like, as an actor, you do certain things that you hope and have to trust that down the line in the editing room or down the line with the director, that, you know, in all the stages after the acting that go on, that hopefully they pick up on it and either include or heighten. And, you know, it could be like the music that's chosen to be played during a certain scene, and that can outshine a certain what do you say, like an inflection or a look or a smirk or something like that. As an actor, you have control over, but then, you know, the director could choose to cut away from that or focus into it too much, and the music could like outshine it, and the editing could just completely miss it and, you know, cut it out completely, and like stuff like that. So he felt he can have a little more control on who he thought the character was and who the character could be. If he described it as having one hand on both sides of the steering wheel, on the camera side and on the off-camera side. He's been doing an amazing fucking job. It's so dope to see him in this role, because it's a serious role, contrary to what Jason Bateman is used to playing in, you know, movies like Horrible Bosses, or like that Christmas Party movie, and, you know, like stuff like that, which is more like comedic roles. Or Paul, which he was like, you know, it was a comedy obviously, but he was like, his role was semi-serious, and he does such an amazing job. He's really, really dope at what he does, man. And I really enjoy his interviews also. He's so knowledgeable about his craft. It's infectious. The premise of the show is that Jason Bateman plays a financial advisor from Chicago that winds up in a position where he is unknowingly at first, but then involved to the point where he has to like completely jump in, laundering money for a Mexican drug cartel. And with each, after the first season, I was like, what the fuck can they do? Like now, like, where can this go? And then the second season just went deeper and deeper and deeper and took sharper turns. And it's like every time he corrects for something, like, you know, he has an issue, he fixes that issue, he seems to simultaneously get out of that issue by getting himself into another issue. So he's like fixing one issue, getting himself into another one, fixing that issue, getting himself into another one, and he goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like sharper, unexpected turns happen with like other characters as well, not just his. And it's a thriller like a motherfucker, and very suspenseful, very, very, very suspenseful. And you guys should check it out. Absolutely should. There's a few key scenes in, not key scenes, but just, I guess, a couple that resonated with me that I wrote down from season 2, which one of them is one of the characters called Buddy, which was the owner of this house that they moved into when they moved from Chicago to the Ozarks in Missouri, is like dying from something like lungs related, I guess, because he has like a oxygen tank, stuff like that. But, you know, he is kind of like an eccentric fella, and it comes out later that he used to have, when he was younger, like ties to the Kansas City mob, and he was a very interesting character. But anyway, in this season, he starts to he has a scare where they take him to the hospital and they think that, you know, Even the hospital says that, he's going to die soon. And he's like, fuck this. And he checks himself out of the hospital. He's like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die in my own bed. And then he winds up lasting, spoiler alert, longer than expected. I'll say that. And he doesn't die right away. And then there's a scene where he wakes up, it's early, and he pours himself a glass of whiskey, and he goes upstairs, and the mother's there, the mother of the family that moved in, which is Jason Bateman's wife, and they have 2 kids. And, he's having like a conversation with her and some dialogue, and she's like, isn't it too early for this? And then he tells her, and I quote, "When you think you're going to die yesterday, today is sweet." And that's from season 2, episode 8 of Ozark. And I thought that was a dope line, and just like a resonating concept in and of itself, right? It's like if you have like a near-death experience or something like that, and you were supposed to die by all accounts and purposes the day before, the next morning must feel like heaven when you wake up. Then another dope scene, it's an exchange between Marty, which is Jason Bateman's character, and the lawyer for the drug cartel, which is like the in-between. Marty doesn't meet the employer, quote-unquote, drug cartel guy directly. He always deals, or she always deals, with this lawyer character. And this lawyer tells, and Marty's having like a semi-meltdown, and he's saying that the lawyer's pretty much saying that he has to take care of this issue with this person or this party that is causing an inconvenience. And Marty's like, I'm not a killer. Like, I'm not, I don't kill people. I don't, you're telling me to take care of it, and you're insinuating that I should kill him or whatever, blah, 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 blah. I'm paraphrasing. But that's not me. I don't do that. And Marty goes, and I quote, "I'm an accountant. I move numbers around." And then the lawyer, without skipping a beat, responds, "I'm a lawyer. I move words around. There are no victims here, right? Just volunteers." And that was like a dope exchange, I thought. And she checked them pretty good. And pretty much saying, yo, none of us are victims. We're all just volunteers. And, semi-sarcastically saying that. And, but there's truth behind it, like you didn't have to get involved. But she kind of sort of le deja dicho that it's like there's one way out of this life. We're all volunteers until we fucking die, either by natural causes or by a bullet to the head. But that's it. Like, take care of this shit. It's a dope show, folks. Check it out. It's called Ozark, now streaming on Netflix for your viewing pleasure. Last but not least, let's talk this Pusha-T, Drake, Kanye beef. So I'm circling back to it. I've spoken about it in the past, and how excited I was for like the diss tracks that were going back and forth. Then this guy Jay Prince kind of supposedly put the kibosh on the whole thing, and convinced Drake not to release some track that he had that was supposedly going too far. And I don't know if there's truth to that or not, but I think that if there is, we might still be able to hear that track. I think that track might get leaked or something. But, and I like this. It's like the essence of hip hop is battle rap. It's kind of like we were talking about at the head of the show with the whole, like the melee in the UFC with Conor and Khabib and what happened after, and how it was so exciting to see, even though it was like a sore eye for the organization. It's kind of also wanted in a sense, by at least like the viewing public. Like, it's exciting. You can't say it's not exciting, whether right or wrong. It's like if you see a fight in the street, it's like kind of exciting, but like oh fuck, somebody's getting hurt type of thing, which is not like condonable or like a good thing, but there is an element of excitement to it. And as long as, like in hip hop, like they keep it like on wax, as long as they keep it on record, it has that equal level of excitement, as long as the line doesn't get crossed to like the physical, like we saw sadly obviously with the most notable case would be like Biggie and Tupac. and how that got way out of hand. Even like to a lesser extent, like the Ja Rule and 50 Cent beef from like the early 2000s and stuff like that. There was like some couple shootings and stabbings and stuff like that, allegedly, but at least nobody died. But the essence of hip hop is like that competitive spirit that comes along with the battling and like the diss tracks and stuff like that. So into all that shit. That's why I like battle rap, like Smack URL and KOTD and RBE, Rare Breed Entertainment, and all those leagues. It's dope. Like that's like the essence, and this is no different. That's why I was so excited about this very credible Pusha-T and Drake like back and forth. Now, since that, everything getting Jay Prince putting the kibosh on it, supposedly Jay Prince, but I know there are other forces at play and other interests, and in my interests, I mean, like in my opinion, probably like higher up corporate fucking money interests, seeing that it maybe it wouldn't even like this type of thing wouldn't go that high up. You know what I mean? I don't know. I was gonna say that like somebody somewhere a lot higher up on the ladder was telling like Drake to lay off type of thing because it would be, it'll hurt sales or something maybe, but I don't know. I'm kind of like thinking that through in my head and kind of doesn't make sense because it hypes it up, but then at a certain level it doesn't. Like it doesn't, Drake is like a very sellable, marketable act and makes a lot of money for a lot of people. And this, like the beef alone, supposedly, according to Pusha, like T side of it, put the kibosh on Drake's Adidas line that was supposed to come out. And it was because of like this back and forth. So maybe they were worried about other sponsorships falling through or something like that. I don't know. But I'm sure that was like part of the math, like that was like in their heads. Anyway, long story short, Drake was on LeBron's show on HBO called The Shop, which I've seen 2 episodes of, and it was pretty good. I like the open format of it. I like the concept of, it's like a barbershop, how you guys talk shit at the barbershop, and a lot of different things are spoken about, which is true. But I didn't like it. It was like a touch overproduced, I think. It was like the haircuts that they were getting looked like fake haircuts. Either you're getting a haircut or you're not getting a haircut. If not, just like sit around and shoot the shit, like podcast format type of thing, But anyway, it was a decent show. It was cool to see like LeBron like cussing and shit, and the dude Maverick does really good at like carrying the show, or not carrying it, but navigating the show rather. And anyway, Drake was on it, and Drake was talking like he gave a lot of the backstory of what happened between him and Pusha, and talking a lot more about Kanye and how Kanye pretty much did him dirty. And Kanye flew him out to Wyoming and was telling him that he's going to help him and he's going to produce like tracks for him, and he gave him 1 track ultimately that he like left with. And he, but he needs, if he's going to work with him, he needs complete transparency and stuff like that. And long story short, Drake made it seem like Kanye played him, got a lot of information from him. He told him about having a kid, and he was telling Kanye, he like opened up to Kanye about having a kid and having problems with the baby mama and stuff like that. And Kanye felt that Kanye gave that information to Pusha, and that's how Pusha like found out about everything. And he made a big deal about Pusha T speaking about 40, which is a producer of Drake's and a longtime friend that has MS. And he thought that was like crossing the line, wishing death upon him, etc. And, he divulged all this information, which made, if true, made Kanye look like a bitch. Made Kanye look like, like grimy and like underhanded. But at the same time, all is fair in love and war, right? If Kanye did do that, it was like a calculated move on his part, and, by all means, he did that. Now, on the flip side of that, which, by the way, like just on the topic of going too far, I don't think there is a going too far. And in battle rap, it's like the going too far is when you pass from saying shit on wax to the physical. That's like literally the only too far. Besides that, anything and everything that's said is fair game, period. So I'm on that side of that when it comes to that, which is pretty much the side that Pusha's on. Pusha-T was on the Joe Budden podcast, which you guys should check out. I'll link to that in the episode notes as well. Let me just jot that down so I do not forget. And he was pretty much on there, and he was like that he saw Drake on LeBron's show, and he was getting like a lot of attention, and people kind of started shitting on Pusha for it, but he said that he felt he had to like clear the air, and he couldn't let him go on thinking what he allegedly thinks of how Pusha wound up with the information and stuff like that. And he reaffirmed the fact that he doesn't think that there's any like going too far when it comes to battle rap. But he stated, like, for the record, he didn't say that he wished death upon the dude, on the guy 40 that has MS. Like, he didn't, if you listen to the bars, like, that's not what he says. He says, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says, tick, 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 how much time does he have type of thing, but not, like, directly wishing death upon him type of thing. But now here's the kicker. Here's the irony. Here's the mic drop moment, I thought, from that Joe Budden interview. According to Pusha, allegedly, he did not get any of that information from Kanye. He has his own disgruntledness going on with Kanye and all the like crazy shit that Kanye's been doing lately, and the fact that he didn't want to put out a 7-track album, but he did so because of Kanye, and like that was, he was vocal about it. The I forget what the girl's name is that released a 7-track record as well. She was against it also. She was very vocal about it, but they did, they're signed to Kanye, so they did what they had to do. They're signed to Good Music, and he's saying even like with the whole, like when Drake flew out to Wyoming to Kanye's and stuff like that, he was like, Pusha was like, I had just flown out like the day before, and then the next day I hear that Drake is there. It's like Kanye like purposely did that, like kept them apart from each other type of thing. And here he hears things about like Kanye working with him, and like Drake was writing for Kanye and like all that type of shit, and he's like, he doesn't like that because he doesn't like the in-between shit. And he's either I'm on your team or I'm not on your team, like type of thing. So he has his own like shit going on with Kanye, supposedly. It could all be bullshit also, but who knows? It's interesting to me though, like soap opera wise, But all that aside, Pusha T is the president of Good Music, which is Kanye's label. All that aside, Pusha says that all the information that he got about Drake's kid and about the majority of everything that he got was from a girl that 40, which is the producer guy from Drake's camp that has MS, with a girl that 40's been fucking, or that 40's been with or whatever, like his latest girlfriend, and that he got the majority of the information from her. And he was like that he only came out to put it out there because Drake did this whole like song and dance thing on LeBron's show, and trying to like prop 40 up like on this pedestal and try to make it seem like so like crossing the line type of thing that Pusha did. And from Pusha's point of view, he said he had to come out with this information to so the truth can be out there type of thing. And so to put Drake in a position where he had to confront 40 about this whole thing, especially because he's going the complete other way and blaming Kanye for something that Kanye had nothing to do with, allegedly, supposedly. But the plot thickens nonetheless, and I think that the outcome of this might be that we hear that track that supposedly was going to put an end to somebody's career that Drake says that he has, that he shelved out of respect for this dude that put the kibosh on it. I forget his fucking name now. Jay Prince. And also, like, he didn't want to supposedly give Pusha, like, the time type of thing. He didn't want to like warrant his shit with an answer. He said that he did lay the track, but decided not to put it out and stuff like that. And he goes into that a bit on LeBron's show, and saying that he texted LeBron and said, "How would you feel if I didn't respond to this type of thing?" And I don't know. That seemed kind of not fake, but yeah, it did. It seemed kind of fake. It seemed kind of scripted. It seemed kind of like bullshitty, like some fuckery was afoot, like when he said that. But whatever. Anyway, I think that the outcome of this might be that track leaks, which is something that Joe Budden, I think, said in the interview with Pusha, or maybe it was a different Joe Budden podcast. He says that he thinks that it would leak. I agree with that. Like, it would make sense if that came out now, and then that would reignite the beef, and then we get to hear some more bars from the Pusha side of things. And with that said, folks, this has been a pretty long episode.